Hello, my name is Jorge Perez, and I am the Executive Director of an organization called the Hispanic American Construction Industry Association, or as we like to say, HACIA, H-A-C-I-A. It gives me great pleasure to join you today at Groundbreak here at Procore Tech's annual conference. What I want to talk to you today about has to do with supplier diversity in design and construction, and what our organization, HACIA, has done over the last several years as part of our 41-year history to really look at opening up opportunities and new marketplaces for our members in the design and construction industry. Nowadays, there's a lot of conversation about supplier diversity and inclusion, and for the most part, we are very supportive of that, just that we've been doing this for quite a long time. In 41 years, we've done quite a bit to ensure that our members get involved in large public projects in the state of Illinois and Chicago, but also throughout the Midwest. Our organization works very diligently to ensure that our members get involved equitably in a lot of design and construction projects, those that are publicly funded, as well as those that are privately funded. The question comes up, how do we do this? As an organization, we've been very proud to follow three main principles, what we call MAS. And in Spanish, MAS means more. Depends on whether you want a lot more or a little more. We typically leave that up to our members. But for MAS, it's membership, advocacy, and services. And under membership, we are no different than any other C6 trade association, membership-based, with over 300 members. We try to create a platform so our members can engage with one another, do business with one another, look at creating new business relationships. That membership engagement is one of the key metrics of our relevancy. And we're very proud that we've been able to do a multitude of events throughout the year that get our members engaged, but also to attract new members. The marketplace in which we operate deals with developers, architectural firms, engineering firms, and construction firms, and subcontractors. For the most part, our membership is made up of Hispanic-owned architectural firms, engineering firms, and contractors of all trades. And we have a very proud history here in Illinois where just about every large major infrastructure project, from work at O'Hare International Airport or at the Department of Transportation, or even in the water sewer redevelopment, our members have been involved in a multitude of projects over the past 41 years. And in this endeavor, we've seen a lot of companies grow in their capacity, hire more individuals, and really lead to more of an economic impact throughout our communities. But our membership is more than just Hispanic-owned businesses. Our doors are open to any business who wants to join and believe in our mission. We've attracted African-American firms, we've attracted Asian-American firms, Indian-American firms, women-owned firms, and also disadvantaged businesses, as well as veteran-owned firms. The way we bring them in is key. And I'll go on to the other aspects of what we do at HACIA. For A, we are big advocates. And I'll come back to the A in just a second here. But in terms of services, we also provide, just as most associations do, a multitude of services to our members. You'll see here that we have the sign of HACIA U. That's the concept that we created and becomes our umbrella group of all of our offerings in terms of training and technical assistance that our members and their employees take advantage of. It also is a means by which individuals can enter the construction industry. Right now, we're spearheading 4 different types of trainings for pre-apprenticeships for individuals and job seekers who want to enter the construction industry. Our services can range from certification assistance for folks who want to jump into the public sector, all the way through to helping adjudicate or mediate a payment issue, all the way through to helping on legal issues as well. In terms of our advocacy, and that's a big part of HACIA and where we made our name over the last 41 years, it's advocacy. Clearly, when you join an association, you want to be a member, you want to get some services, but you really want an advocate. And you want an advocate to be able to be there for you, look at opportunities for you, look at giving you the lay of the land in terms of the marketplace, where opportunities exist. Now, we don't necessarily guarantee work for our members. We provide the platform and advocate for ways and policy changes that can lead to more opportunities for firms to bid on. And we like to couple a very strong advocacy effort with a very strong service component as well. For advocacy, we've been saying that there are 3 different ways in which you can do advocacy. And a lot of this may not be a big surprise to you all, but then again, golf is pretty easy. It's just a little ball that you hit with a stick. But let me go through these with you. We talk about advocacy at HACIA through our relationships, our legislation, and our public action. And those 3 areas compose a very strong and strategic advocacy agenda for us, because oftentimes we'll have to pull from each of these in order to affect change into the design and construction industry. Now, for public action, I will say, by and large, our membership is made up of Hispanic-owned firms. And recently, we had an opportunity come up where we were very disappointed in a very publicly known, well-known entity in the Obama Foundation. The Obama Foundation was heading up their efforts to develop the Obama Center. And part of their messaging that was going out into the marketplace was was being interpreted in the marketplace by a lot of our members as no need for Hispanics to apply, that they wanted it to be a solely African-American constructed project. We didn't believe that that was really embracing true diversity and inclusion. And so we took public action and showed up to the Obama Foundation with 70 of our members on a very cold January day a few years ago in 2017. Now, part of this was really important because our members really felt invigorated. We've had a good mixture of our members who had been with the organization for 40 years. And these are the tactics and activities that we did 40 years ago and really helped create a name for us. And quite honestly, we didn't have to do it because, well, we created a considerable amount of relationships and had a lot of relationships where we wouldn't need this. But unfortunately, it became very difficult and we came to an impasse discussing diversity and inclusion for Hispanics with the Obama Foundation. And so we had to show up with our allies in this endeavor. So we dealt with local elected officials, chairman of the Economic Development Committee for the City of Chicago. We got some good media coverage. Locally, we got some good coverage. Now, we did ruffle quite a bit feathers on this, but people forgot that in true organizing, you definitely want to come to a compromise and an agreement. And we were very proud that we were able to do that. And we did it very publicly. It's one thing to go after somebody very publicly, but it's also just as important to make sure that you publicize your agreement to work together going forward. And luckily, we were able to do that with the Obama Foundation. And what greater opportunity that we had then at our annual gala that year, which is only a few months after the actual public action that we took, where we had the Obama Foundation sign a commitment to work with HACIA and its members and for other Hispanic contractors to work on the project. So very exciting indeed for us. But we also wanted to make sure that we still highlighted what we did in terms of legislation. Now, legislation really is the key to really affecting change. And as folks talk about supplier diversity and inclusion, you got to make sure that you have a very strong and effective legislative effort. Not easy to do. In fact, a lot of our legislative efforts, as many association efforts go, oftentimes end up with very minimal or marginal successes. But in the lessons from the last recession, there was a lot of feedback that we got from our members, and executing upon what we hear from our members is key to what we do at HACIA. We were hearing a lot of input and feedback about how do our firms get opportunities to work in other sectors, other marketplaces that aren't necessarily the publicly funded projects and that public marketplace. As many of you know, the public marketplace for construction The payment cycle is oftentimes very long, and that becomes a very serious barrier to entry. But over 12 years ago, during the recession, there wasn't a lot of projects. And so things and backlogs were drying up. So we started to look at where would they be spending over the next 7 to 10 years. And so we decided to focus on targeting these upcoming marketplaces: the utilities, private universities, telecom, the Class 1 railroads, as well as any corporation that receives large tax credits from the state of Illinois' Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Now, the first one was the utilities. Now, the utilities and the grids and their systems and infrastructure in which they operate hadn't been upgraded in quite some time. And many of the utilities had presented long-term capital projects that would initiate an upgrade to their system. But part of that legislation for them in the utilities required an increase in rates. Part of the challenge with increasing opportunities with the utilities as they upgraded their infrastructure was an increase in rates. And they had to go to their utility oversight regulator. In this case, it was the Illinois Commerce Commission, and they had to request that approval. And they also had to get approval from the State General Assembly here in Illinois. They were able to do that, and at the same time, we were pushing legislation saying, as you go forward on this, we would love to hear what your annual spend is in terms of diversity of all categories, not just design and construction, in all categories, so that we, the public, and the marketplace has a better idea of how much you actually spend with diverse firms. And so the utilities really didn't put up much of a fight on this. They were too laser focused on their own. And lo and behold, we pushed, and we got some strong legislative champions that helped push the bill in the Senate as well as the House. And then Governor Pat Quinn signed the legislation, and it became law. And what the law required was not any mandates or any percentages of X amount of dollars that needed to go to diverse and minority firms. It was an annual reporting to their regulator, to the utilities regulator, in this case, the Illinois Commerce Commission, their annual reporting of their diversity spend. The first year that they submitted, and by the way, the legislation required them to send their CEOs and sit in front of the Illinois Commerce Commission regulators and present their report from the prior year. The first year that they went up, the reports were abysmal relative to their overall spend. ComEd, the power utility in Illinois, had spent over $1 billion in the previous year, in this case 2011, and less than 3% went to Hispanic firms in all categories. And then what you saw was the other gas utilities and water utilities go up, and relative to the overall spend, it wasn't there. Or it wasn't what folks had imagined it to be. So what happened? The dynamic changed. The conversation changed totally. The intent of the legislation was to have a different conversation. Instead of giving lip service to groups like us and our allies, in this case, the Federation of Women Contractors, or the U.S. Minority Contractors Association, what happened was the utilities started to engage in a different dialogue. They wanted to see how do they actually change the culture in their own procurement departments to embrace diversity and inclusion more than they had in the past. And it wasn't easy, and we were still being advocates and lobbying them and forcing them to change. But luckily, we had very strong allies in the General Assembly, as well as the governor, as well as the corporate heads and the corporate boards of the utilities, who realized that they were spending quite a bit of capital dollars on their infrastructure, and it would behoove them to actually create this type of environment and programs to encourage more minorities to work in their capital programs. And really, they're throughout their systems. So over the next several years, you see a considerable uptick in terms of the spend at all the utilities. You see a considerable amount in each of their reports in subsequent years. And what you see here are just slides of the utilities' dashboard snapshot of their annual spend. And you can see how some have grown considerably. So it's been almost 10 years since we passed that initial legislation with the utilities. And I got to tell you, a lot of other industries are looking at it. Utilities in Illinois deserve a considerable amount of kudos. It didn't happen overnight. In fact, it took a few years before they got a bit of a rhythm in terms of their outreach and really providing very thorough good faith efforts. They were able to do this because they knew that the atmosphere, the environment in Illinois had changed considerably. It wasn't just looking at opportunities for the subcontractor. They were looking at everything from engineering services to legal services, all the way through to construction, and even showing firms how to actually do work with the utilities in a marketplace for some where they never worked before. And we've had some wonderful success stories where we had some firms who were in around the 5 to 10 million a year in revenue. They get a couple of opportunities with the utilities, and then a few years later, they grow and get additional opportunities, and now are in revenues in excess of $40 to $50 million a year. We have one member who had been chasing people's gas for 20 years and wasn't getting anywhere. The law passes, it gets implemented. Didn't happen overnight, but then this firm starts getting calls in from People's Gas and an opportunity to bid on projects. And lo and behold, he lands a small project. He's able to demonstrate what he's able to do, and then signs on for a 5-year contract doing restoration work. And we were really excited about it because then he was able to win on the rebid. So a lot of these stories we've actually are really thrilled about, and these are fantastic opportunities that we believe wouldn't have happened had we not caused this type of change. And I talked about the other areas that we looked at and wanted to tackle. Hospitals being another one. So it took about 4 years to get that legislation passed. In fact, the hospitals, who put up quite a bit with their lobby and their association, didn't want to incorporate these types of changes in their procurements. But hospitals and health service centers is a marketplace where there is going to be a continual spend, particularly now that we realize over the last 6 months that we're not prepared for a pandemic. But even before then, we knew that the capital spend was there. We were able to point to some hospitals here in Chicago where they had voluntary diversity and inclusion programs in their design and construction to really help open the eyes of the Illinois Hospital Association and its members. That bill was passed. It was an agreed bill in 2015. Now we're only a few years from that, but it's been a slow go, very similar to what it was with the utilities back in 2011. But we think there's going to be additional opportunities with the hospitals as well. In 2017, we say that we hit a grand slam. Now, if you don't know a little bit about history of Illinois in 2017, our budget was at a stalemate. There was a stalemate for a few years in the Illinois General Assembly. Nothing was really passing. There was no state budget. So there was an opportunity for us to really make a go at it and look at these other marketplaces that we've always envisioned opportunities for our members. First one was working with Class 1 railroads. And those are the large Class 1 railroads, the CSX, the Norfolk Southern, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, the Union Pacific, as well as the Canadian Pacific. Those railroads pretty much own the other short lines as well, but there's an annual spend with railroads as well. And we wanted to see how we can get our members involved in that. That just passed a few years ago, and we've already had one workshop with the railroads here in Illinois, and we think we have some great opportunities coming up with the railroads. Private universities were another marketplace that we wanted our members to be involved in, and they've actually wanted us to help them get involved. Private universities in Illinois had been doing quite a bit of spend and still are doing quite a bit of spend. The private universities lobby wanted to make sure that they didn't have to have anything like this put on them, but we assured them that there was no mandate. We were able to come to an agreed upon bill that did open up a different discussion with private universities on their capital spend and their reporting to the Illinois Board of Higher Education. We also are looking at telecom, and that's still been a little difficult because there has been some challenges with that. There's large data centers that are still being built, and we want to make sure that that core and shell, where those data centers are going to be housed, open up opportunities for our members. But the big one here that we're looking at is the tax incentive that the state of Illinois uses. In this case, it's called an EDGE tax credit. That's used to lure and retain large corporations, multinational corporations here in Illinois. That passed, and part of the requirement is them to report annually what their diversity spend is. And so that's still relatively new, and we still have a lot of work to go on that one to make sure that they adhere to that law. So when we talk about change and we talk about environment, diversity and inclusion, how do you change all of that? We believe that our model of being able to incorporate a very strong advocacy effort that includes public action when you need to, very strong relationships, and legislation, that it's key. One more note about relationships. Over the course of 41 years, our organization has been able to create some deep and very broad relationship. And much of it is the executive director's responsibility. My predecessors worked really hard to create new relationships and maintain an existing relationship. And that stewardship, along with a real good understanding of our mission, is what I believe has really helped us succeed over the last 10 years. So relationships, public action, and legislation are key to really affecting change. The design and construction industry only seems to be growing. We know that the great work that the folks at Procore do becomes a useful tool and partner for construction. We also know the realities of the demographics. Hispanics in the US are growing, and we continue to grow quite a bit. In fact, this next census number, we know will have a significant increase. It behooves us and it behooves Hacia to ensure that those who are going into the construction industry, or those who want to go into the construction industry, are doing it safely, more effectively, and really have more impact on their surrounding communities. That's important to us. Construction has always been an entryway into the middle class here in America, and we know it'll be a continual operational fact for Hispanics going forward. From folks who are driving the truck, the van, working out of their homes or their garages or a small storefront, to the mid-sized firm that leases space in an industrial park or has their own site. We want to make sure that Hispanic Americans are being able to do what they need to do in order to compete more effectively in this country and going forward. So with that, I'll take any questions. I'm actually here online. So if you wanted to ask me any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I do appreciate this opportunity that Procore has given me to present my presentation on diversity and inclusion and how to effectively create change in the design and construction industry. I hope that I've been able to give you at least a perspective of how we do it at Hacia. Again, we are the oldest Hispanic construction association in the country. We do have ties with our counterparts in other parts of the country. We're really excited and proud about that, from New York to the Carolinas to Georgia to Florida, Texas, Colorado, and Arizona. We do have a strong membership presence and relationships that we believe we can help push diversity and inclusion forward. So again, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jorge Perez. Have a good day.